Hello and welcome to the Quantum Couch. I'm your host, Dr. Ina Conboy, and I am so incredibly thrilled that you're here with me for this very first episode. In this episode, I'd like to invite you to settle in, maybe on your own comfy couch, and get to know me a little bit better. Who I am, where I come from, what led me here, what you can expect from this podcast going forward. To help me with this endeavor, I have asked my husband and a great support for this podcast, Patrick Conboy, to come in and be part of this conversation. To be completely honest, I actually tried recording this podcast on my own, and we just felt it may be a little bit better with having Patrick speak with me so that this flows a little bit better. Um, and in addition, Patrick has been a great person to help me with setting all of this up in terms of technology and just supporting my interests. And so he's just this background for this podcast who will come through as well. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you. Um, I guess I'm interviewing you today, aren't I?
You are, which doesn't really happen in our life, does it?
No, you're the one that does most of the interrogation.
Touche.
Um, I guess let's start with who are you?
Who am
Your
I?
listeners don't know you. I know you, but who are you?
Absolutely. So I am, in my day job, I am a psychiatrist, and I am currently in my private practice called Conboy Psychiatry LLC. And I see patients primarily in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. My interests in my private practice are primarily treating people with various mental health issues, but primarily I really love working with women's health. I became kind of this niche area where I see a lot of very high achieving neurodivergent population, meaning people with ADHD, autism, um, OCD. So that's kind of been my niche. And when I'm not working as a full-time psychiatrist, I am a mom, I'm a wife, I have animals, um, and I have a lot of interests that I try to keep up with.
Okay. Um, can you explain what this podcast is all about?
Absolutely. So the Quantum Couch was born out of my various interests. I was actually recently on vacation in Maine, and we were going on these amazing hikes and seeing and being part of this gorgeous nature. And I had some time to kind of have things come to me. And when I do have a lot of free time to think about things, which happens here and there, I think about things like, do we have free will? And um, do people have consciousness that is fundamental to reality, or is it something else? Is consciousness everywhere, like in rocks and other inanimate objects? Just a lot of philosophical and scientific aspects. I think about different things. And in addition to that, I also have a lot of interest in mystical aspects and spiritual aspects, like is there life after death? Or just treatments like acupuncture, Reiki, just so many different things that I'm interested in. And so I wanted to create a podcast that ties in a lot of those interests. And very frequently, in our society, we're either a doctor who is very logical or this spiritual woo-woo person who doesn't understand logic. And to me, a lot of these things actually have a lot of crossroads and they intersect. And so I wanted a space to be able to speak about evidence-based medicine and also speak about spiritual aspects, speak about free will in a philosophical way, and also tie it into maybe how that pertains to doing psychotherapy with people and what does that mean for them. It's just a lot of existential, a lot of big questions. And I think that there are a lot of people out there in the world who are very similar, where they would like to have a space or a podcast or just kind of tie a lot of these things together, where it's not just scientific, it's not just uh, all non-scientific, or just you tie the spirituality, intuition with what we know, with the science, with evidence. So this is my baby coming from all of that.
So a lot of questions pop up with everything you said. That was a lot. Um, Several things we need to drill down on. I think in this first episode, of course, in future episodes you'll go into more depth about a lot of these things. But for the first episode and getting to know you and getting to know the podcast, I think let's kind of define some of these things to a certain extent. Um, so you mentioned science and spirituality and mysticism, and typically those are on very different sides of a spectrum, if you will, until, of course, something that seems magical becomes science at a certain point, right? Um,
Absolutely.
I think most people, when they think of a doctor, of an MD, they think of a, excuse me, somebody very, very firmly based in science and um, not a whole lot of voodoo, if you will. Um, so where is this? Where do you see the overlap occurring, and can you speak to the differences between those two? Because you're very firmly planted in both of those worlds, and I think that if someone is going to explore both of those worlds, it's good to have a foot, or if somebody's going to explore either of these worlds, it's good to have a foot in both. So can you talk to that a little bit? Again, that overlap and where you see it.
Yeah, no, this is really a great question, which I can speak hours about, but for the sake of trying to have some brevity, um, going back to just, if I may, to my childhood a little bit, I think I always felt that I never really fit into any particular group. I was I mean, I was planted heavily in some aspects, of course, of my family and of society that I was living in, neighborhoods. But I've always felt there were some aspects to life that were kind of outside of this immediate environment that I was in. And what this led me to kind of develop, I guess, or maybe I was born this way, but maybe partially just my upbringing has contributed to this. But I think that by having different points of view, by seeing the world from different perspectives, you can have a better idea and understanding of what the world actually is and looks like. So if you were raised in a particular way, in a particular way of thinking, in a particular ideology or religion or background, you're going to have a perspective of the world with this particular um, way that you were taught and raised. And I think it's very helpful to sometimes step out of this particular way and see what else is out there so that you can gain additional perspectives. There's like this classical thing of when we talk about perspective, like if you look at an elephant in a room and it's a really large elephant, you can't see the whole body. So someone in the front is going to see the trunk, someone in the back is going to see the tail. And when you ask that person to please describe an elephant, they're going to describe whatever they're seeing from that particular perspective. But the truth really is that the elephant is much larger and if you put all these perspectives together, you can get a better idea of what the elephant actually looks like. So when it comes to evidence-based medicine or science, and then you also look at spirituality and those mysterious aspects of the world that we don't really know yet and we can't quantify, I believe that by having this greater knowledge and looking at things from scientific point of view and also from um, this maybe mysterious and yet not based in science way, we can then get the bigger picture of what that elephant actually looks like. What is this world? And I'm fortunate enough to have those interests, to like science and intuition, to really kind of explore the mysteries of the universe and then try to seek answers using scientific method, if possible, which is not always possible because we're just not there yet. Um, does that kind of answer the question, or do you feel like there's something else I am missing?
Well, I think it brings up more questions.
Good point.
Um, so you're talking about different perspectives, different
Mhm.
points of view, seeing things from multiple angles, and I know that you like to do that. Um, obviously your viewers don't, your listeners don't because they don't know you yet. Um, but do you think that this is something that you are predisposed to? In order for somebody to look at things from multiple angles and different perspectives, do they need to be predisposed, or can somebody learn it? Say, for example, your listeners that maybe you're going to, we hope, tune in to every single one of your podcasts or as many as possible. In listening, can they learn to see things from multiple perspectives, see the science as well as the mysticism, and uh, um, have those two converge in their mind to see that entire picture of the elephant?
Well, I think it really depends on if the person is even willing or wanting to grow. Because if the person is not willing to even concede of the possibilities outside of what they already know or accept, then I don't know if that's really going to happen unless there's going to be some drastic change in their life that will force them to look at different perspectives. But yes, I do think that there is a combination of being predisposed to it naturally. I think I've always, for example, was very curious even as a child, and this curiosity really expanded into everything that I did. When I was learning about for example, Reiki, or when I was learning, which is energetic healing, that we can probably will talk about at some point and down another podcast, or about UFOs, I was always very kind of skeptical about certain things I heard. And I would apply logic to it and be like, is this really true? Like, this sounds kind of bogus, but that sounds interesting. So I think I was always trying to have certain level of critical thinking, and it was somewhat natural for me. Same thing goes for science. Like I would listen to data and I would read a journal article and I would also doubt certain things and be like, well, what about this and what about that? And like you're really avoiding some aspects of life that you're not really writing about here. So constantly kind of questioning and wondering and um, never really accepting things purely as I was told. I guess I have a little bit of a natural predisposition against dogma. And maybe that is part of my personality. Maybe that is also a combination of my upbringing, just based on my history, which I'm not going to go into here. Um, but I do think it's something that can also be learned because I'm very fortunate to be in the position of my career where I'm a psychiatrist and I was trained in psychodynamic psychotherapy, which by nature of how it is taught, I, as a psychiatrist and a therapist, I'm supposed to withhold my own judgments and my own beliefs when I am in the room with my patient. And when you do this frequently enough, you're going to really learn to be much more empathic because you're able to kind of really put yourself out there for your patient and really kind of feel like what life is like on their end. And also it helps to not apply your own belief system on that person. And so it's both. And maybe I went into this career because I just naturally like it and it fits me who I am as a person, but I also think it's something that can be taught and learned. And so, yes, it is my really great hope that people who will be listening to this podcast maybe naturally are also predisposed to being curious about the world and feel like they want a space where they are accept it as both the logical Spock and intuitive human. Um, kind of the offspring of those two. Um, well, Spock, yes. Well, Spock is half, right? Human? Yeah, so there you go. So yeah, we're breeding little Spocks here with this podcast.
Um, there's a lot there. So I take it then that in today's age, in today's society, it seems like there's a lot of polarization. Um, and it occurs to me that people are not kind of behaving the same way that you are in terms of, what you just described. If I simplify it, you're basically saying you observe what exists, what is there, without your own judgments, without trying to ignore um, your personal biases and stuff. And it seems to me that that doesn't happen with many people in today's society. There's a lot of people that don't really observe the facts coldly. They bring their own thoughts into it right away, or they just completely ignore things because it doesn't jive with their way they view themselves and the way they view the world. So they just ignore a lot of things. So do you think there's hope that
Absolutely.
people will learn to observe things
Well,
instead of just judging things before actually without actually seeing them?
so I would like to say that I um this is the way I am, but I don't think this is the optimal necessarily way to be. Do I think that this is a good idea to practice where people can suspend their own judgment and try to see the world in various ways other than their own? Yeah, I do. I think the whole world would be a little bit better if we had some more empathy. But as I'm getting older, which is happening, unfortunately, or maybe even fortunately, I do like getting older in some ways. I think that it is somewhat naive to believe that the world is just going to become more empathic. We have different types of people and different ways of being, and it's actually really great. So I don't necessarily want everyone to be like me because that may be disastrous. Who knows? But I think that it would be nice if people worked as they got older to really listen to others, to really try to see things from different perspectives. They don't necessarily have to agree. I don't necessarily agree with everyone I hear. And of course, I have my own judgments. I mean, I'm human. I mean, it would be impossible for me to not judge. But I really try my best to question those judgments, to really analyze them, to sit with them. I try to practice what I preach, basically. And perhaps being a psychiatrist really helped me to grow as a human being as well. It's truly an honor, and just it's really great to do the type of work that I do. I value it a great deal. And not everyone has that access or that ability to have a career or people around that help train you to see things from different perspectives.
I'm going to go back several minutes here and ask some other questions based on some things that you had said. Um, Now, you had mentioned a while ago, you had mentioned consciousness.
Yes.
Can you talk about what that is? And I realize this is an episode or two unto itself, but you mentioned like things having consciousness. Can you define what you mean when you say consciousness? And I know that you talk about fundamental consciousness. I don't know if you said that here. I can't remember, but can you talk about it?
Yes. So consciousness is defined by depending on what field you are using consciousness in. So if you're talking philosophy versus psychology versus psychiatry, so absolutely, I think it's really important to define consciousness. Consciousness is defined by many philosophers as what it's like to have an experience, a particular experience. So if you are seeing a color red, you have a particular experience of seeing that color. So if you knew everything about the physics of like what it's like to see a color red, how it arises, what color, what wavelength, like what is a color red, the experience of seeing it and what it's like is what consciousness is. So it's not necessarily one's ability to have intelligence or uh, soul. That's not what we're talking about here. Consciousness is just a fundamental kind of what it's like to experience a particular thing or whatever it is, what it's like to be you, what it's like to be a rock. And we don't really know too much about consciousness when it's like for like certain animals to experience it. But there is a lot of talk about whether consciousness is just there for humans versus also animals versus do we expand it to plants? I just recently read a very interesting book about um, plant intelligence, which has just blew my mind. And weirdly enough, also am kind of exploring this idea of whether inanimate objects like rocks and tables and other things have consciousness. And so in philosophy, there is this big talk and discussion whether consciousness is something that arises or is this something that is fundamental to the universe. Um, and you just kind of build upon it.
Well, as I said, I don't want to dive too deeply into this because I know that this is going to be, several episodes probably of your podcast. But I do want to clarify. So what you're saying then is that consciousness is not limited to sentient beings.
Well, that's the argument, is that some people would say it is limited, but when you discuss it on a bigger scale in philosophy, there is this um, idea that consciousness is not limited to sentient beings, and perhaps it is one of the major just building blocks of the universe, kind of like the fundamental forces like gravity. It's just there, and then you take it and you put it together, and like you get different levels of consciousness and ability to use that as the universe puts itself into various forms within itself. And so you get things like rocks versus orcas, which are killer whales, by the way, one of my favorite animals. It's not random that I thought of an orca, and also humans. So it's just different kind of building upon this conscious fundamental aspect. So that's the question. And am I proposing that this is the case? I mean, I will talk about it in another podcast, but I do kind of wonder about whether consciousness is fundamental to the universe. And it is something that I'm very interested in. And so I recently listened to this amazing audio documentary by Annika Harris called Lights On. Highly recommend. It's fantastic. But it explores just that, basically. What is consciousness? And she has physicists and philosophers and very professional meditators basically on this documentary talking about this particular subject.
So you had mentioned intuition. Um, in your work anyway, right? Where's the balance between science and intuition? How does the intuition come into play in what you do, or even just in everyday life?
So some people may laugh, but I am a Cancer. And so for anyone who knows anything
Don't
about
call yourself
astrology,
a Cancer. You're not.
so for anyone who knows about astrology, Cancer is one of the most sensitive zodiac signs in the zodiac chart. And so I think that I was always very naturally intuitive, but from a young age, I wasn't really sure what that is. I had to kind of learn to trust and to figure out what is my intuition, and how to go about it. So I've always had these inclinations. Like I would meet someone and sometimes I would have very positive feelings about that person, but sometimes there was something negative or something off about meeting that person that I didn't quite understand. And I would very frequently put that aside because I just had no particular data to support these feelings. I just met this person. And what I've learned is that as as I got to know the person, the things um, that I had this like the feeling would return very frequently from when I met them the first time. And ultimately, I would learn what that feeling was about, like whether it was a feeling of that person negatively impacting me down the line, or like their personality trait that just didn't click with mine for whatever reason. Um, but there was always something that came out that was kind of a strong aspect that I learned of why kind of my intuition, why I initially had that feeling. And this is just a small example, but my intuition comes into play more and more as I get older. But I would sometimes get these sudden downloads of knowledge about something or someone where, again, I couldn't explain scientifically, where I would just know things about the other person. And when I would bring this up, it would actually be the case that my intuition, whatever that download was true. So when it comes to my clinical practice, um, I definitely follow a lot of research and latest advice and recommendations on treatment in psychiatry. I try to keep up with the data. I try to keep up with the um, latest and the greatest. But I will
Continuing
say,
education, right?
I'm sorry.
Continuing education.
Yes, absolutely. Continuing education. Um, and at the same time, when I am in therapy with a patient and I am sitting there and I'm listening to them, um, I again often get these downloads of knowledge, or like something like someone would be saying something and I would be like, you know what, I think this is because blah, 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 or something else. Or I have a feeling that this patient had this experience when they were a child. And again, no particular data to support it. It just sometimes comes to me, um, or I would just feel certain things that make me wonder if I am feeling what they're feeling. And so am I picking up on something that's not mine, but I'm using this as like my thermometer, like my feelings. By the way, there is a lot of books and research written about intuition in clinical psychiatry and basically in therapy. There's a lot to be said about that. Um, but I think my intuition has become so attuned, or is getting more and more attuned, where I am able to provide additional set of data without the person saying so. Like I am picking up on things about who they are, how they move, just like my body is just picking up on things about them and their body. And I've learned over the years that it's very, very important data. Um, and like I said, there is a lot of research about intuition being used in clinical settings, and turning and using it appropriately. Not everyone trusts their intuition. There are practices and things one can do to kind of fine tune their intuition more and more, but it is definitely something that I highly value and respect, in addition to evidence-based medicine.
So, okay, that was a lot about intuition and your intuition, and that's great. How do you balance it? How do you balance the science aspect of it with what you're picking up intuitively?
I don't think I balance it. I think I use both equally. I mean, there's not really much to balance. I don't see them as being different or opposite of each other to balance them. I think I just use these two tools to kind of give me more information about the world. And so I kind of see it as these two rivers that meet and flow together to provide a stronger current.
I think that, I mean, I would consider that to be balance, and I don't think they need to be opposite in order to balance. You can have alike things or dissimilar things that you can use in balance. They don't have to be opposites. Um, I guess the question is, in that balance, do you use science, um, the science of psychotherapy, for example, do you use that to double check your intuition? Or do you use your intuition to double check the science? This, but for the listeners, I know absolutely nothing about psychiatry except what I've learned from my wife, because that is not even close to the field that I'm in. Um, but the science of psychiatry, if there is a method to follow, in terms of what you do and how you do it as a psychiatrist, are you able to follow those steps and do any parts of those steps? Do they confirm your tuition and intuition that you are, picking up the things you are reading from a patient or situation or anything like that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I've always kind of used intuition to check the data that I'm reading or picking up from the patient that's being told, and also vice versa. Sometimes people tell me certain things, and I don't always feel that what they're telling me is true, and I can't always describe what that is. So my intuition is just this, okay, this person is telling me this, but I don't quite believe them for some reason. Why is that? And I just put it in the back of my mind, and I don't necessarily act on it because I don't know yet what that is about. And so I wait to see what comes up. And is my intuition wrong sometimes? Yeah, of course. I think sometimes that is the case. But often, more often than not, if I had this inkling of something about the data being wrong, it does turn out to be the case, like something is off. And vice versa. Like if I have an intuition, I'm human. I don't always know if it's just like if it's intuition, or am I reacting to something? Is this something like my own background and my own stuff that's contributing to this feeling either of anxiety or depression or fear? And is this really intuition, or is this something else that I'm experiencing? And I don't always know the difference. And so I definitely then have to, again, wait and see whether my intuition was correct or whether the data that's being presented overrides whatever my intuition was. Um, or what I thought my intuition was. Like maybe it wasn't intuition, like I said, maybe it was something else that has to do with my own psyche, my own reactivity and feelings.
So between the science and the intuition and the balance between them, it's almost like going back to what we were talking about before with like multiple perspectives and viewpoints. You're approaching something from multiple angles. One maybe is with science, one is maybe with intuition to gather that complete picture. Would that be a appropriate assessment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or at least the appropriate assessment, I think I'm seeing. I mean, I'm also human, so my
Yeah,
perspective, we're all
you're
very limited.
fallible. I mean, we all make mistakes. Well, none of us are
Yes.
perfect. Um, all right. So a little bit slightly different topics here. Um, this podcast is called The Quantum Couch. You're a psychiatrist. The couch part makes perfect sense, although you don't have a couch in your office. Um,
I have very comfy chairs.
yes, they are very comfy. Um, there's a virtual couch here, right, for listeners to lie down on,
Absolutely.
metaphorically. Um, where does the quantum part come in? I mean, it's called the quantum couch. We've talked a little bit about science, but it seems like maybe is quantum physics going to be involved in your discussions,
I sure hope
your
so.
podcast?
So the couch, you're right. So the couch is supposed to be like this nod at psychoanalytic psychotherapy, which is what I do, like psychoanalysis. So the couch is the chase. And if you saw my podcast artwork that Patrick has helped me to create, it has a cat on it. And the quantum aspect is I definitely hope to bring in some physics into this podcast because I'm fascinated by quantum physics
Well,
and
let
just
me stop
physics.
you right there. You mentioned it has a cat on it. What does the cat have to do with this?
Uh, well, okay, I'll get to that. So it
Okay,
actually has
all right.
two meanings. The cat has two meanings. But one of the meanings, I guess, is the physics part where there is this famous example of trying to figure some things out within the quantum realm using the Schrodinger cat. Schrodinger was a physicist and he tried to create a thought experiment where a cat exists in a box and you have this radioactive atom that can actually break down and possibly kill the cat. And once the box is closed, the cat is in this position of you don't really know what's happening, whether this radioactive thing just kind of broke down and killed the cat or not. And the cat is living in the space of being alive and being possibly dead at the same time. So the only way to find out is actually to open the box and to see whether the cat is alive or dead. And so like this whole kind of this idea of Schrodinger cat became kind of famous. And so the cat on my couch is Schrodinger cat. But also I'm paying respects to my beloved cat that just died recently. Her name was Kala, and she was a wonderful, wonderful being. She was with me for 14 years, and she died a bit suddenly, and I miss her very much. And so this cover art is paying respects to her and also my interest in physics and science.
Okay, but I'm a little unclear. Where does I mean, we're talking a lot about intuition, consciousness. Uh, we had mentioned mysticism, spirituality, and obviously mental health, psychiatry, and obviously I'm guessing a little bit of philosophy in there. But
All over the place, right?
yeah, a little bit all over the place. How does quantum physics play into any of this? It seems very much out of left field, and can you explain how this is like? If I'm listening to this podcast a year from now, what have I heard that links quantum physics into all this?
Well, I think that all of it is linked. Quantum physics, philosophy, science, mysticism, because all of these fields are just different fields to explain the world of what it is. And so physics is just part of this world where we're trying to figure out how the universe functions. How does our physical world exist? Who are we? How does this all put together? How does our brain work on a physics level? Just a lot of these things physics is just fundamental blocks. Like it provides us these blocks to kind of explain the world at large. And so that's physics part. Philosophy is the part where you're trying to figure things out more from kind of trying to come at them from thinking perspective, trying to figure things out in a way that the physics hasn't covered yet. So you have physics and philosophy together, and you kind of get this bigger picture of the world of what have we already learned and what theories do we already have that are concrete or semi-concrete, because a lot of theoretical physics is not very concrete, but we're getting there hopefully. And then there's philosophy where we're trying to really think our way through to figure out what's going on. And then mysticism comes in because again, this is the area of life that we are trying to figure out. Like for example, near-death experiences where people come back from really being dead for a few minutes and having these mystical experiences of almost going to like meeting their dead relatives or having angels talk to them, or people who can talk to people who have been deceased, like people who are mediums, and just so on and so on. It's just like a lot of these mystical experiences combined with philosophy, combined with physics and other evidence-based sciences, including medicine, including genetics, biology, all of this just provides us this larger picture of what the world is really like. Because I think that if you just stick in the world of physics, or if you just stick in the world of mysticism, or just in the world of medicine, or just in the world of philosophy, to me, it feels like you're missing all these other components of the world and perspectives that perhaps if you're not paying attention, you're not really going to maybe get the bigger picture.
So essentially, you're limiting yourself. You've got like horse blinders on, and you're never gonna find out why the answer to like the universe and everything is 42.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Um, all right, so I think we're going to be wrapping up here in a little bit. I've got a few fairly simple questions. I think they're fairly simple questions. And then we're going to do a lightning round that I'm going to make up on the spot. I'm going to improvise and surprise you. Before that, though, can you talk about um, some books or authors that have kind of inspired this podcast or inspired you to go on this journey of creating a podcast?
Absolutely. So I mean, if I look back on my bookshelves, I have so many different authors that I would love to talk about. The books that I'm reading recently, in addition to listening to the audio documentary about Annika Harris, which again, I highly, highly recommend because she just takes so much data and in like, I don't know, 12 to 13 hours or something like that, she covers a lot, basically of just, again, different perspectives regarding consciousness and what it is. But currently, I am reading a few books. One of them is called Quantum Physics for Beginners by Carl Pratt. This book definitely makes my brain hurt. Um, I think I'm going to have to reread it a few times. I'm like at the pre beginner stage. So maybe in a few rounds of reading this book over, I'll get to the beginner stage. But just learning the basics of what quantum physics is about, it's mind-boggling and for a reason. Um, I'm also reading books by David Chalmers, who is one of the most famous mind philosophers, Philip Goff. Um, I have like a whole pile of books here. For example, Buddha's Brain by Hansen, Altered Traits by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson. I mean, just oh my goodness, so many different books. I have Carl Jung over here. I have books on plant consciousness in my bookshelf. Bunch of books in philosophy, a bunch of books here, my medicine books. I mean, just really all over the place. I also have past life regression books, which by the way is one of my like my favorite things to learn about is past life regressions. People who went under hypnosis, they go into past lives as opposed to just going into their childhood. I have a bunch of books on those. Just I'm reading several books at once right now. Not sure if that's really good, but I am.
So in going forward on this show, can you tell me like what type of guests you envision bringing on the show, and um, if there's anybody in particular, like could you give me like your dream list? You know, maybe we'll be able to get them, maybe not, but your dream list of people. If you want to drop some names as well, that might be kind of fun.
So, my goal is to bring people who are physicians or medical practitioners in various fields who also are out of the box thinkers, who don't just practice evidence-based medicine, but in addition have some other talents or skills or aspects to them in other realms, whether it's philosophy, mysticism, spirituality. Um, I also would love to bring people who are Reiki masters or acupuncturists, people who use different modalities other than just um, medicine. Let's just say that.
Western.
And the people who I would love to bring on also are physicists, scientists, Annika Harris.
Yeah,
If you're
drop some names.
listening, I would love
Who's
for you to. Hmm?
who's on your dream list? Drop some
Annika
names.
Harris is on my dream list. I mean, she's fantastic. I mean, I would love to just pick her brain about things. She's definitely on top of my list of people I'd love to contact.
You ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
All right, lightning round time. What is the last book you read, front to back, completed, not currently reading?
Project Hail Mary. It's a sci-fi book. Loved it. Very fun.
And there's a movie coming out soon, isn't there?
There is. I'm really looking forward to it. Ryan Gosling is the main actor.
Favorite philosopher?
Nietzsche.
You don't want to say why?
Do you want me to say? I don't know. You were saying it's a lightning round, so I just gave you a fast
It
answer.
means you have to answer quickly. It doesn't mean you can't explain your answer.
I think he inspired me to really think on a broader spectrum when I was in college. I was a philosophy major in college, in addition to being genetics major. And so reading his books really took me outside of my own box a bit. The Gay Science is one of my favorites.
Uh, Biggest professional influence on you?
Ooh, that's a really difficult one. I have so many. Probably mainly my grandmother. My grandmother was a psychiatrist in Russia, and she was also very heavily rooted in science and yet was very open and flexible when it came to experiences outside of what science can explain. She was very wise. She was very kind. Um, she was just this wonderful human overall, and I loved her very much. Still love her very much. She was probably my greatest influence overall, but there's really, really many more people.
Um, Ouija board, Oracle deck, or tarot deck?
Oh, that is so difficult to answer.
Quick, come on, come on,
Um,
come on, come on, lightning round. Come on, let's go.
Oracle cards.
Okay. Which is your favorite deck that you have?
My favorite deck. Oh, I have a whole collection. Probably my ancestors' cards.
Coke or Pepsi?
Neither. But I would guess if I have to really pick, I would probably choose Coke Zero.
Oh,
For those of you who are listening, Patrick is really against Coke Zero or Diet Coke. He's really just a Coke guy. Give him all the
I'm
sugar.
I'm just against fake sugar to begin with.
All right, that's fair. That's
Not
very fair.
healthy for you. I mean, not that sugar is, but fake sugar is worse.
Agreed. I'm sure people will disagree, but maybe we can have a podcast just about that.
We are about to wrap up. Um, so if people want to reach out to you, if they have questions, or want to join you on this journey, um, how can they find you?
There are a few ways. First of all, you can always email me. My email address is thequantumcouch@gmail.com. I would love to hear from people, whether people have suggestions for episodes, whether they themselves want to be on the podcast and think that they have something interesting to talk about. Would absolutely love to hear from you. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for the Quantum Couch. And please subscribe to the podcast in whatever form that you listen to, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, or elsewhere. And if you would like, leave me a review and share the Quantum Couch with someone who you think may love it too.
And before we go, any final thoughts for listeners today?
I just hope that you are going to embark on this journey with me and can help me and help everyone else to expand our minds. And I really appreciate you being in this space with me. Thank you. Take good care, stay curious, and keep exploring. And I will end with a big, big thanks to my husband, Patrick, who has been on this journey with me as well, and is going to continue being on this journey, helping me edit this podcast and help with all of the aspects of this podcast going forward. So big applause to you, Patrick. Perhaps we should have you come back to this podcast as a guest where I can interview you.
Yeah, I don't know that you want to scare people off, but maybe. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Absolutely. And thank you. Until next time. The information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not create a physician-patient relationship with Dr. Ina Conboy or any guest on this podcast. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.